Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here with my weekly update. I was going to say it was the first weekly update of 2025, but then I realized I did do an update last week, but I had nothing really to update. So this is my first update of 2025 with things to update. And we'll start with, I had a pretty big update this week. I did a quick little video that I put up yesterday, actually like 10 minutes ago. So I'm filming this, but yesterday as you see this. I hit 1,000 subscribers this week. I wasn't expecting it. I have made a conscious effort to not pay that much attention to subscribers because I know it will mess with my head if I do. And I'm not doing this booktube thing as a whatever. I do it for myself and, community. It's not about subscribers to me, but I did hit that 1K. And so I did put out a call for questions for a Q&A, and I'm going to have that call open through the end of this month, and then I will do the Q&A video in February. Another big change, which you probably have noticed, unless you're like me and you have YouTube Premium, I did make the decision to monetize this channel. This is not because of money, though. I have been told by a couple different sources that once you hit the 1K mark, YouTube can actually add ads to your videos, even if you aren't monetized. And I chose to monetize so I could at least control the ads that are there. I want to make sure that there are no ads in the middle of the videos. So that's why I went and monetized. I'm not expecting to make money off this. Look, I know how little this pays. That's not what it is. Mostly, I just want to control. If they're going to put ads on it, I want to control what the ads are, if that makes any sense. So you should never see a video or an ad in the middle of my videos. And please let me know if there's any problems with the videos. I'll see what I can do. But yeah, so that's why I did that. However, I will say, if you have YouTube Premium, you don't see any of the ads. So there you go. I live in a house with 2 teenagers and a husband who thinks you can learn anything from YouTube, and I have a booktube channel. So it made sense for us to have YouTube Premium, and that is a good use of money in our house. So, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, an explanation about the monetization. It's not because I'm trying to make money, because I know I won't. I am just trying to control the ads that if YouTube decided to put ads on my videos I don't want them to do it without my knowledge. That's why I have done it. So there you go. So last week, I couldn't update you on anything that I had read because I hadn't finished anything yet that year. I had finished things that week, but I had included them in my 2024 wrap up. So I actually do have, let me get to my right screen here, 4 books here to update you on that I have finished since the beginning of the year. So there you go. It's like, 10 days. Yeah, I'm filming this on the 10th, so 10 days. And I just realized one of them is just out of reach, so hold on a second. I'm never quite prepared with this. You would think I would, but I'm not. So this first book is a book that I read from my library book group, and I may be at this book group as you watch this video because it's Saturday morning. So as I'm filming this, we've not yet had our discussion. And this book is 1,000 Moons by Sebastian Barry. This is the follow-up to his book Days Without End that we read, I think in the summer of 2024. And that book is good, but there was one really big issue in it, in that there is a character in that book who is a Lakota girl. She was, her tribe was pretty much decimated by American soldiers at the point, and she and the other children were taken back to the army fort. And then she was kind of adopted by the 2 men who are the main characters of Days Without End. And the issue that I had, the issue that everyone in my book group had, and the issue that apparently a lot of people had when that book was released is there didn't seem to be any recognition that would cause any trauma to her whatsoever. So, and also the way that book ended, we kind of wanted to know what happened next. So because of those 2 issues, we kind of forced this book to be our January book this year. And I'm glad that we did. So here is the deal with this book. I think that you need to look at Days Without End and 1,000 Moons as one unit. Days Without End did actually feel like, I don't want to say unfinished, but there was that big, huge issue that just really bugged me, and the ending didn't feel like an ending to me. But I also don't feel you could just pick this book up because It alludes to things that happened in Days Without End, but it doesn't explain them. So you're kind of like, what is going on? I do think you just need to consider those 2 books one unit. And if you do that, I would highly recommend it. Sebastian Barry is a very good writer. He is an Irish writer. And so it's interesting that this is like an American set book. He does a really good job of making it feel American. And in this case, especially because this is set in Tennessee after the Civil War. So it does feel really Southern to me. And I appreciated that. In this book, Iona, she's a little bit older. I think this takes place a couple years after the end of Days Without End. And she is still living with John Cole and is it Thomas McNulty? I always forget. And something happens and plot ensues. I mean, I know that's not much of a summary, but there's a lot about Iona kind of dealing with her identity, both as part of this family living in a town where Native Americans are not considered human and being a Native American, but also kind of being part of that society, being in a very tenuous place and dealing with a lot of prejudice, things like that. And also there's just a lot about what the South was like immediately after the Civil War and some of the things it dealt with. I thought, again, both books together, I think it's kind of necessary to do that. And I do think Hannah at Savage Reads had said that she had read Days Without End, but she read it so long ago. And I would say if you had read Days Without End long enough ago that you don't remember it very clearly, I would highly recommend rereading it before reading this. It's probably been 6 months since I read Days Without End, and there were a couple things I was like, wait a minute, what happened? What? So I would recommend reading those 2 books in pretty short succession so that Days Without End is fresh in your mind when you read this. Okay, the second book I finished was my first audiobook of the year, and that is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. So Richard Osman is the author of the Thursday Night Murder Club, which everyone knows, and the little lines have appeared on my phone again, which means I'm crooked. There, now I'm straight. This is a new series. This is actually a thriller series, not a mystery series, but it is funny, I guess. And I did this on audio. I had put the ebook on hold at the library, and like the ebook I'd waited and waited and waited, and the ebook had just come in, and I think it was Brett at Brett's Book Stacks said that the audio is really the way to go. So I turned the ebook in and then put myself on the audio list and had to wait a couple months for it to come in, but it came in right before the new year. So I almost DNF'd this book to begin with. It took a good 25% for it to get going. Part of the issue might be an audio issue. Not that the audio narration is bad. I actually think the audio narration is very good, but just the nature of it being an audiobook. There are a lot of characters, and for me personally, when I hear it versus when I read it, it's a little harder to keep them straight in my mind. Even throughout the book, I was like, okay, who's that again? I'd always have to the book jumps quite a bit between the characters. I'd always have to stop, who's this person again? And kind of realign myself each time. So again, I don't think that would be an issue if I read it. I'm not putting that out as a criticism. That is just a comment on my experience reading it. I did ultimately enjoy this book. I felt it took too long to get going, to kind of get going. It is a thriller, not a mystery, which is fine, which is completely fine. The ultimate resolution, I didn't figure out, so that is always good. The characters are not as, I don't think they're as fully developed as you find in the Thursday Murder Club. And that again might be because there are so many of them. But yeah, it was fun. It's not, I mean, it is not as good as the Thursday Murder Club, I don't think. But I would definitely I probably would listen to, even though I had issues with the audiobook this time. But I think I probably still would listen to it again, like in the next book in the series. So it's one I'd recommend, just with caveats. So there you go. The third book, and I've talked a bit about this. In fact, on Monday, my New Year, New Me book tag is going out, and I talk about this as the book I couldn't wait to read. And that is Death Comes as the End by Agatha Christie. So if you've been on this channel for a while, which apparently a lot of you have not, but I read one Agatha Christie a month. I am working my way through all of her books, and I do it on roughly publication order. I say that because I'm doing it in publication order unless there is some reason for me to skip ahead. For example, like I skipped ahead a long time ago and read Halloween Party because, no, actually I read it because it was Halloween like 2 years ago. But then it also was supposedly the basis for A Haunting in Venice. Like there's like very little in common between those two books. I mean, character names are pretty much the only thing that's similar between those books. But like if there's an adaptation coming, I might jump ahead and read that and then go back. So, but roughly. So I am up to Death Comes as the End. And the reason I was so looking forward to this is I'm probably like halfway through the Agatha Christie's now. I don't know. I don't know where I am in this list of books that she's at. But at this point, we have a lot of English crime novels, a lot of country village mysteries, a lot of English manor house mysteries, a lot of London-based mysteries, and everything is sort of contemporary to where Agatha Christie was writing it, which is fine. It's really only been really played a part, and I think actually in a positive way, in one book, which was N or M, which is a Tommy and Tuppett's book, which she wrote. It was published in 1940, so it was written pre-1940, and it's the only book she wrote, I believe, that actually... Well, it's the only book she wrote during World War II that references World War II. And since it's so early in World War II, it's like it references things, but you know how they turned out, and there are things that happened after that. So it's all kind of weird that way. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is Agatha Christie was writing contemporary to her mysteries and thrillers with detectives, and she had her way. And then she comes out with this one. This is set in 2000 BC Egypt. So very, very different. Now, Agatha Christie was very interested in archaeology and antiquities. Her second husband, Max Mallowan, was an archaeologist. She met him when as a tourist. This was back when tourists did that. You would kind of go, and touristy thing was to go into an archaeological dig. She met him on one of those trips. And then throughout their marriage, which lasted the rest of her life, she would go with him on these digs. So she knows of what she speaks with this. And there's even, at the beginning, she explains, so there's a lot of talk about, I mean, you know this if you know history, they always talk about how the pharaohs would marry their brothers and sisters. And she explains that doesn't mean they're brothers and sisters. No. That's just, they referred to family members in different ways. She also explains the sort of, the Egyptian calendar. She knows of what she speaks. So that's very interesting. Another thing that I liked about this book is it's not about pharaohs. Like everything I've read about ancient Egypt involves pharaohs. Other than the Exodus, which has even that involves pharaohs. But I've never read anything that's really focused on just sort of the people in ancient Egypt. And this does. It's my nose is itchy, it happens. It focuses on a family, and the patriarch of this family is a priest, like a mortuary priest or something, but his job is to do the rites for the dead. So we're talking about people who are comfortable in society. They aren't slaves. I'm going to talk about slaves in a second in this one, but they also aren't the pharaohs. So the setup of this is we have this family, and the sort of main character-ish, or I would say the main focus character, is this woman named, I'm going to call her Rhinaseb, something like that. Renisem, I don't know. It's spelled Renisenb. We're going to call her Renisem. And she is a young widow. She has a daughter. She has returned to her family of birth after the death of her husband. And so in this family, it's the father, the mother is dead, her 3 brothers and their wives, 2 of them are married. And then her and her daughter. And then there's also this maid-ish sort of person. The maid person was apparently brought into the household by her mother. The mother is dead. And now the maid is one of these people who's suck up. I mean, there's no other way to describe her. She's a suck up. And then the father at the beginning of the book is not there. He's gone off to do things. He comes back to the house and he brings a concubine named Nofret, who is young, like probably younger than Renisem or whatever her name is. And bad things happen. No one likes her. She seems to have plans and no one likes her. And she causes, just her presence causes a lot of conflict in the family. So it's not really a surprise when she ends up dead. And so then they have to figure out what happened. And we go from there. So a very interesting thing about this book is that this is not a detective story. In a lot, not all, but in a lot of Agatha Christie's books, there is a detective, whether or not that is, Poirot or Marple or Parker Pine or whoever, one of those actual detectives of her, or if it's a standalone and there's a detective-like character there. Usually there is a detective and then that detective figures it out. That's not the case here. This is like, you have to kind of wait and see. It kind of figures itself out. And that was a nice change. Not that I have anything against detective stories. I just thought that was very different. There are some great characters in this book. Really well done, interesting characters. There is the grandmother. Oh, I forgot about the grandmother. The patriarch's mother is still alive. And she's this old lady who's smarter than everyone else and seems to know what's going on. She's a fun character. Characters are mostly really, really interesting. I say mostly because the one who isn't is Renisem. She spends the whole book going, oh no, what's happening? Oh no, everything's so bad. She's so annoying. Fortunately, the book is strong enough to outweigh that, but I wish that she was more interesting. But really, if you gave me this book and didn't tell me what it was, I don't know if I would ping it as being a golden age book, but I would not ping it as being an Agatha Christie novel. It's just so different from everything else that she wrote. She has a memoir called Come Tell Me How You Live. I think that's what it is. That talks about her. She wrote it basically as a love letter to her husband. And it's a lot about them going on these archaeological digs. And I see a little bit of that in here. Not as much. That's a very lighthearted, happy sort of book. It's a memoir of things that she likes. But I see a lot of the things that she picked up in that book here. So this is definitely not the Agatha Christie you're used to. So I really enjoyed this book. I only had two kind of issues. One was Renisem or whatever her name was, and her whininess. But also, so the last book I read was The Moving Finger, Miss Marple. And I had mentioned in that the term black slaves comes up a lot. Now that's one of her English country village murders. It's a Miss Marple. And I was pretty sure, and I still maintain, I think that black slaves are a substitute for another word that starts with N that had been there, because Agatha Christie, she has her issues, but she was a writer who realized she had issues, and during her own lifetime, she fixed some of those in past books. She also gave permission for publishers to fix that. That's why I don't have as much of an issue with her books being sensitivity edited since then, because she herself did that in her own life. But in that book, I really felt like the term black slaves was just a correction for the N-word. But she uses the term black slave in here a lot too. And it seems, I don't think it's a substitute for the N-word. I don't know what it is. Because it doesn't seem like in place here either, because I don't think that ancient Egyptians would refer to their slaves as black slaves. They might say they're Ethiopian slaves or Hebrew slaves. The only slaves, I'm sure they had slaves, but the ones I know of are the Hebrews, Moses and his folk. But I don't think that black slave is something that they would say. And I don't know if that's just Agatha Christie trying to write in a language that people of 1940 or when did this book come out? 1944. I don't know. That just seemed very weird, that phrase. So, and I don't know what to think of it, because as I said, I don't think it was the same issue as it was in The Moving Finger. So I don't know. But every time it would be like, that doesn't seem right to me. But anyway, do highly recommend this book. I would say after And Then There Was None, this is my second favorite Agatha Christie. I don't think anything is ever gonna overtake And Then There Were None. I could see maybe something overtaking this, but it will stay one of my top Agatha Christie novels. Okay, and then the final book I finished this week is the first book in a mystery series, and this is A Killer in King's Cove by Iona Whinshaw. Bookish best friend has gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over this series, and she really kind of pressed me to try it, and I enjoyed this book. So this is set, Bookish best friend described it to me as Maisie Dobbs meets Three Pines. I have not read Maisie Dobbs, but I read that Jacqueline Winspear came out with another book that's very Maisie Dobbs-ish. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's the beginning of a new series. And just based off that, I'm going to assume that Maisie Dobbs is the same way. I can definitely see this being like Maisie Dobbs. Doesn't feel very Three Pines-ish to me. If you were to look at a scale and put like cozy down here and dark, dark, dark up here, I would put Three Pines about here, and I'd put this about here. So it's not cozy, but it isn't as dark as Three Pines can get, based on the first book in the series. But this is about Lane Winslow, who has come to this very small community in British Columbia after World War II. She had been a spy or an operative for the British. She is British, but for the Allies during World War II, and the war's over, and she just wanted to start over. She just needed to get out of England. She had seen a poster of British Columbia and decided that's where she wanted to go. So she's moved to this very small town. And I think that's where Bookish Best Friend got like the Three Pines tie, is because the town is pretty, yes, the town is kind of important to this book, and you get to meet the townspeople. I just don't feel that other than that, it really felt like Three Pines. And that's fine. That's not a criticism. That's just why I wouldn't say it was like Three Pines. So she is in this town, and one day, so this grossed me out. I will say this grossed me out. She goes to get some water out of her tap, and nothing comes out. And the neighbor, who's this really grumpy guy, comes over, and he's blaming her for doing something to the water. She's like, I didn't do anything to the water. And so they go up. Apparently their water comes from a stream it comes directly from a stream. So they go up to where their water comes them off the stream. And there is a dead body blocking where the pipe or whatever, where the water comes. And I'm like, I would never drink from that tap again. I would never drink from that tap again. I don't know. That just really grossed me out. But anyway, so they call the police and everything, and the police come. And of course, the police chief and Lane, they have there's sparks between the two of them, but there's also a little bit of conflict, because in the dead man's pocket, there's a piece of paper, and the only thing they can make out of this piece of paper is Lane Winslow's name. And so she becomes a suspect. So of course, being the former spy, she tries to figure it out. It's, you kind of know where it goes from there. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy this book. I am looking forward to reading more in the series. I felt like it took a long time to get to the actual crime. However, I think that's because it is the first book in the series, and there's an element of necessary world building. Not as much because it's not a fantasy novel, but there is an element of world building that is necessary, the way she chose that story. I don't think it's necessary in general to use Three Pines again. If you read the first book, Still Life in Three Pines, it opens with the murder and then it builds. I just don't think the setup for this book would have worked that way. So I will give a pass to sort of the little bit of a slow beginning on this one. I am interested to meet more of these people. I thought Lane was a fun character. It is not as dark as Three Pines. This is not a book. I'm not going to be buying this book series. This will be a library book series for me. There's no reason for it to be on my keeper shelf, but it is definitely one I would recommend. It's definitely fun. And I'm looking forward to reading more of it. It looks like there are 11, soon to be 12 books in the series. It looks like a 12th one is coming out this summer. So I will keep doing this. The author, Iona Whinshaw, is Canadian, is from British Columbia. She really had sense of place down. British Columbia, just in sort of topography and climate and all that, is not that different from Oregon. So I really felt like it was real. I've also been to British Columbia, so it really did feel like British Columbia, but also had that sort of English element to it, because there was one part, this is not at all a spoiler, but Lane makes the point that like when they have tea in King's Cove, it's like this weird sort of, she says, no one in England has tea like that anymore. It sounds like it's something like when I go to tea with my friends, with Bookish Best Friend, which we do a couple times a year, where it's high tea and it's all fancy. And she's like, people in Canada, I mean, people in England don't do that, but Canada keeps it up. So I really enjoyed it. Definitely a series I'm going to continue and that I would recommend. So that was my week. I am not going to go through what I am reading now, but I will list it down below. If I did that, we'd be here all afternoon. And so, yeah. And as I said in my little video yesterday, send me any questions for my 1,000 subscriber Q&A. I would love to get them. Okay, talk to y'all soon. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.